Ladies and gentlemen, we are here to know about app development as well as the Coily app. Asha is here. And so Asha, my first question to you comes this way. Can you tell us just your story? We start at the beginning years to current, just so that we hear everything about you. So you were born and raised in New York?
In Atlanta.
And then moved. Oh, you were in Atlanta. Okay,
yeah, so whenever people ask me to tell my, a little bit about my story, I just feel like it's such a long story. So I'm going to try to briefly touch on just the different important pieces of my timeline. So I'm first-gen American with Guyanese parents, so I'm Caribbean. And so I was born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia, and I am the second of 4 siblings. We can really get into it. But my journey with kind of tech and app development started when I was in middle school. So I went to a middle school that was kind of like a STEM middle school, and we had like this tech class, and it was super like loosely tech based. So I don't know, you guys might have them in high school. Do you have like a robotics club or anything like that?
We have robotics club, or if you want to, focus on a concentrated area, we have a BOCES program offered to juniors and seniors where they can, go leave their home school and go to that campus.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I kind of dipped and dabbled in more so like robotics. So I kind of started with tech when I was in middle school, but that's like super basic, not really deeply anything at all, just touching it on a surface level. And then I went into high school, and that's when I took a kind of like an animation course, or just like really basic like tech kind of background courses, but again, nothing like specific, nothing that would really inform like the full scope of like how to develop or how to program or how to do anything like that. And then when I was in high school, around in my freshman year, there was a lot of news in the media surrounding police brutality. And so that was the first time in my kind of lifetime when it was like one of the most popular things going on in the news and in the media and on social media. And then my uncle actually had a run-in with the police officers and things like that. And so it was just an issue that was like really on the forefront of just like my community and my mind and in my household and in my family. And so then my siblings and I decided to create an app. So I'm the second of 4, but my older sister and my younger brother and I, so the 3 oldest ones, we decided to create an app called 5-0. And 5-0 was an app that allowed citizens to rate, review, and track their interactions with law enforcement. So essentially, you could download the app, and if you're stopped by a police officer, after you finish your interaction with the cop, you could open the app and fill out this quick report that said, how did the interaction go? Could you rate it on an A through F scale? Where did it happen, like the zip code? And so essentially what that allowed us to do was it allowed us to aggregate the data or the trends in how police interactions went, based on location in the United States. And so we could say police officers in this zip code have a history of having positive interactions with citizens, and the police officers in that zip code, they don't. And so it made that information public so that anyone, the news, citizens, if you're planning on moving, police officers and police departments themselves, it just made the information public so that they knew like they were being watched and that anyone could access it if they wanted to. And so the process of building 5-0 was interesting because I had actually never developed an app before, and I didn't know how to create an app at all. And my siblings and I, it really began with a Google search on how to create an app. And we built the app, we started there, and we Google searched our way through the entire process. And so we found an app development platform that allowed us to, and I might get a little technical here, but it allowed us to export to both Android and iOS so that people with Android phones and Apple iPhones could like use it. And so taught ourselves the coding language as we went. Like we were literally spent the whole time like on those websites that helped you answer different coding problems and things like that. Designed it ourselves through the features on the whiteboard, and so the whole process was a learning process while simultaneously trying to build something that worked and that solved the problem. And so we launched that in 2014. Again, that was my freshman year of high school. And within the first month, we had gotten 10,000 downloads. So it ended up going viral. And I can tell you a little bit more about how we, got it to go viral. And again, that was 2014. So that's when people were like on blogs and websites and things like that. But I can get more into that later. I'm just going to try to go through the whole timeline right now. So it ended up going viral. And that was my freshman year of high school. And so we kept building it, growing it. And then my sophomore year of high school, we applied to pitch at this competition called the Innovating Justice Competition. And it was a competition based in the Netherlands, right? So that's 12-hour flight away from Atlanta. And it started, the first round of applications, we were up against 300 other people, and then it came down to 30, and then it came down to 5. And so I flew out to the Netherlands with my brother, and I was 15 at the time. It was actually like 3 days before my 16th birthday. We flew out to the Netherlands and pitched it against people who were 30 and up. Like I was 15 and everyone else was like way older than me. And I pitched it on stage. It was a 10-minute pitch, and we ended up winning that competition. And so along with that, we won $20,000 of seed funding. And so that was like my first kind of foray into tech, startups, app development, anything like that. And then, that was just super dope because it's like my first exposure into like entrepreneurship in the tech world and anything like that. And so my 10th grade year, I actually left brick and mortar school, which is like, in-person school. You go into a building every day. And I went to online high school. So I finished my last 2 years of high school doing online high school so that I could also focus on building 5.0 and just trying to grow it, using the funds for those kinds of things. And then my senior year of high school, my sister had already graduated and gone to college, and I was about to graduate and go off to college. So we decided to pass it off to the ACLU, which is kind of like a social justice organization, nonprofit organization. And so we decided to pass it off. And, that 2017, when I graduated from high school, that's when we moved on from 5.0. And so then I left and I went to Cornell, and I was pursuing my undergrad degree in computer science. And if there's one thing I've realized about my entire life, I'm a free spirit, and I love entrepreneurship, and I love the startup bug, and I have a lot of ideas. So after my first 2 years there, I decided to take time off from college and pursue creating Coily. And so Coily is an app that uses artificial intelligence to help Black women find the best hair products, styles, and techniques for their unique hair type. And so the Black hair care industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. We spend billions of dollars on our hair every single year. And despite the fact that there are thousands of products, tools, wigs, weaves, extensions targeted towards us and marketed towards us, there really isn't a way that we can sort through everything based on our hair needs, our hair histories, our hair types, or anything like that. And so Coily kind of comes in as an intermediary to help Black women sift through everything and kind of organize the Black hair care industry. And we do that by enabling women to log onto the app, fill out a quick hair quiz, and we create a customized hair ID for each of our users that kind of allows us to put them into different user personas and then connect them to the information that would be the most interesting to them. So rather than it being science-based, like we know the science of your hair, it's more so community-based. So if a woman who has a 98% match to your hair profile rates a product super highly, it's most likely to work for you. Or if 6 women who have a close match to your hair profile rates a product highly, it is going to work. It's more likely to work for your hair. So it's really community-based. And so I started beta testing Coily in 2019 and officially launched it in 2020, early 2020. And so I've been growing it since then. We recently were featured in a few media outlets. And right now I'm actively fundraising, trying to get seed fundraising and make a couple 100,000 for the end of the year to just promote it and market it and grow it, get a team, et cetera, et cetera. So that kind of is my journey in a nutshell, brushing over a lot of different minor pieces in my timeline. But yeah, that's kind of what my story looks like.
Okay, so now, wow, you saw me taking notes. So this journey of app development started for you as a high school student, and it came up with just this simple idea. I mean, it's really interesting because I speak to students a lot, just every day, and I know YouTube has been, how to put on makeup, how to learn an instrument. So you use Google on just a simple search engine as to how to create an app, because for a lot of us.
Definitely. And I think what's really cool is just like you can search like how to tie a tie on Google, you really can find a how-to for anything technical. And especially, you know, that was back in 2014. Now in 2021, there's a wealth of information out there broken down in super easy, super simple terms, and it's super accessible. And so like, even to this day, like most of what I know, like Photoshop, app development, graphic design, really anything, like it's just been learned through Google searches, and I'm still like learning now. I think that's actually one myth that a lot of people who aren't really involved in the tech world believe. You don't really ever know how to code, rather you just know how to always find the information you're looking for. And so once you acquire that skill and you understand the basic framework of how things work, you really can copy and paste certain segments of code and update them for yourself, or rebuild them for yourself, reframe them for yourself. So there really isn't a point where it's like you know everything, you know how to do everything, but it's a constant evolving journey of learning. And so embracing that through, you know, starting to embrace that when I began my app development journey and continuing to embrace that along the way has really helped to propel me forward.
So I think it's important for the audience to know that you don't have to take a course, or, you know, it's more on like, okay, just go down that rabbit hole and do the research and get those questions answered. You can do that all online.
Yeah, you can. And even if I think if you were to ask anyone who actively builds or creates, you know, solutions, or is trying to build or create, they will most likely tell you that they have learned, or they're actively teaching themselves while they're going on the process of creating. And so there really isn't much of a barrier. Like the barrier to not having information is simply like going online and figuring it out for yourself, or finding someone who's a mentor and having them tell you to go online and figure it out for yourself. So, or pointing you to a resource where you can learn it yourself. So everything, it's really out there. So if you don't know how to do something, the only barrier is going out and figuring it out.
So Asha, you know, you mentioned Cornell, and so, you know, so take us through. So with 5.0, when you said you had to, you know, pass it off to the social justice organization, did you have to, can you talk a little bit about, did you have to sell it for a dollar amount, or did you don't, like, how did that work when you said you passed it off to this social justice?
Yeah, so I essentially just didn't really have the time. I knew going into school I wouldn't really have the time. And again, my sister, she's older than me, so she had already gone off to school. And so it was more so like, and people had been aware of the project because again, we went viral, we had a lot of visibility with it. So it was more so us reaching out to them, emailing like, hey, we're going to be going off to school. Would you like to take over this project? This is what it looks like. This is what, you know, how it can be edited, et cetera, et cetera. And then they were just like, yeah, we'll do it. And then we ended up passing it off. So it was a little more smooth than we anticipated, but we didn't sell it just because we didn't really want to have to go through the process of that. And two, it was a social justice platform. And so it was more so for the good of solving the problem than like trying to make, you know, money off
your
of it.
head. Cornell, the whole college process. We have high school students in the, we have juniors in the building. We have sophomores here as well. Can you talk about that for a minute? The young Asha, as far as just taking the next step.
Yeah, wow. So I think throughout the entirety of my high school career, I've just been involved in a lot of, you know, just like tech programs, STEM programs, extracurricular programs. Like I was a super, super nerd in high school, which is cool, you know, dope to be a nerd. But yeah, so I would honestly, looking back, my senior year of high school was like a super stressful period of time. But I think it was simultaneously, it was a time where I really had to figure out what it was that I was looking for in a college. And I think that's something that a lot of students don't really take the time to do. So over like the name of the school, or like maybe the you know, which program you're looking for, I think what size school do you want to look for? You know, like what does the environment look like? What does the racial breakdown of the school look like? Do they have the unique program that you're looking for? And so in the beginning of my search for schools, wasn't really even thinking of that. I was like, okay, let me just like figure out some schools, list them, and then start applying to them. And I actually applied to like way more schools than I should have. I applied to like 18, I think, or something like that. So looking back, I would not have done that. But that's really because in the beginning of my process, I hadn't narrowed it down based on what I wanted. And so I finally, halfway through the process, I was like, okay, let me figure out what I'm looking for. And so that was like a good STEM kind of tech program, somewhere I could do computer science, but also have the ability to mesh that with like graphic design, which is something I'm super passionate about too. And then also like location based, like, do they have a strong Black community? Like, is it a space where, is it more campusy, or is it located in a city where you're super integrated with the city? And so I ended up going to Cornell, and they have a really strong computer science undergrad program and a really strong Black community as well, especially amongst the Ivies. We have the strongest Black community. And I like the location, it being a campus in itself, and the fact that Ithaca, which is the city Cornell's in, is like the campus. So like the entire city is like kind of focused around the school itself. So regardless of where you go on the bus, like you're not going to be too far from other students. And I like that because it was just safer that way. And it's cool. You're walking home at night, like you're kind of on, like the whole campus is like your space. And so it was dope. I'm not gonna lie, like the people I met are to this day, like even though I've taken time off from school, they're still super close friends of mine. I had an amazing time there. Like I liked my experience there. And so I have like absolutely no regrets. But I definitely would say, before you decide to go to a school, definitely research, like get a feel of like what kind of school you're looking for. Like, do you want it in a city? Do you want it to be a campus itself? Like, what kind of people are there? Talk to, maybe if you can reach out and talk to people who are on campus there. And that's actually interesting because one of the app ideas I had in high school, was an app called Froshly, and my siblings and I worked on that one as well. But Froshly was an app where you could connect to students who are at the school that you're looking at. And so that way you can ask them questions, things like that. But definitely just reach out, like figure out what is it like to be on that campus, and what is it like to experience that school, and then see if that aligns with what you truly want, because you will be spending like the next 4 years there. Plus, if
What I love is what you're saying is that you can have more than one idea. It doesn't mean that all of them are going to be your, hitting it out the park. I think as a creative person solving problems, there's multiple intersections of issues that are happening in the world that, you're looking at saying, well, this could solve it. So I think it is a sifting and sorting process sometimes that we're all having to go through when we decide on what idea that we kind of want to land on. And, I think what I love what you were talking about with Coily, right? You also really kind of did the research on what is a need, right? In terms of specifically like the hair care industry, or as we can see how timely, what I thought was when that, when you won that, it was just timely. It was of the essence. And so, when we're talking about building apps, when we talk about problem solving, really trying to find topics, content, on how we can really work and solve problems, and then kind of backing it up and doing the research.
Yeah, and I think there's even like a concept in the startup world. They say there are riches and niches. And so in finding kind of like your niche in your niche, you're able to like, figure out, you're able to like create a lot of value for small communities. And that ends up being like something that makes a lot of impact. But I think too, I more so than, being in love with tech, I like that it enables me to be able to create. And so I would consider myself a creative, like above all else. And so the way that I interact with the world is very much so from a lens of like problem solving. And so when I'm inconvenienced in line at Publix or at Walmart, do they have Publix in New York?
No, we don't have Publix.
That's a Florida thing.
Family has it in Florida.
Yeah, so at the supermarket then, like if I'm inconvenienced, like, why am I inconvenienced? How can I solve this problem, So I think when you approach the world through a lens of solving the problems that you face on a day-to-day basis, you will inevitably happen upon problems that you can solve, and then ones that you interact with so much so that you'll be passionate about solving them,
So tell us about Coily. So you're on campus, Cornell University. What year how did you like that? That must have been we talk about problem solving. So you're enrolled in school, and then now, like, is there your inner voice speaking to you? Like, Asha, we like put this on hold because we can do this. Tell us that story, because that must have been a lot of pressure.
Yeah, I think, so I am first gen American, and that, comes with the whole do super well in school, be an X, Y, and Z. But I was blessed to have parents who, my mom's a serial entrepreneur, and my dad's an entrepreneur too. So that's kind of been, since I was in second grade, I'd say I want to be an entrepreneur when I grow up. And so I think I very much so have always moved off of kind of trusting my gut and what feels right. And I know in spending my time there, I met amazing people, and I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed programs, but something always felt wrong. And what's interesting is my mom would call me and say, "How's Coily going?" while I'm at school. So in making the decision to leave, I didn't think I was losing anything, but it felt more so like a realignment or a chance to truly go after what feels like the right path for me at that point in time. And I'm not a very fatalistic person, like just in terms of life in general. And so I think that if that wasn't the decision for me, I'd be realigned back onto the path that I'm supposed to be on. And so making the decision to pursue Coily, like I've never regretted it. And it just felt like something that I was meant to do at that point in time. And throughout my years that I spent off so far, there have been so many signs that have pointed to the fact that I've made the right decision. So it wasn't a difficult decision to make. And I think one of the biggest factors in making it was, leaving the friends and connections that I made while I was there. But the entire first year I left, I would go back and visit and just like stay with my friends. So, I haven't regretted that decision. And I think it was more of a realignment than anything else.
So let's talk about Coily. Like, what skills? I mean, I have like you in your comments, you have more, like you make me actually want to like drift from this paper and like find out a little bit more. So you said a lot as far as just that inner voice and knowing, and coming from a household where you are like have creative people right within your household. So you have actually been surrounded by that all your life. So yeah, that wasn't too far, like a hard decision to make. But inner voice and hearing that is a big part where I think a lot of us don't. And during this time period, throughout life, like we may want to go with what family says, or, what's quote unquote the right thing to do, where that inner voice is telling you, okay, let's do this, trust me.
Right.
So bravo for you for, hearing that and being true to you. I always tell young people, be true to you. You'll hear that in the quietest of moments, you'll hear, where you need to go. Right. So with that, what does a typical day at Coily look at like for you? What time do you start? I'm a teacher. I don't know how I got into this morning profession, but it's the passion that keeps me, but one would never know because I'm a night person. So talk about your day and how it all works at Coilyapp.
Yeah, I think my days have evolved as Coily's evolved as well, but currently I am actively fundraising. And I'm a morning person too. I don't wake up early in the mornings. I feel like I'm like wasting my day. So I wake up probably like 7 something. I go to the gym because it's really helpful. I'm like a person where I'm really trying to achieve balance in my life in terms of like my friends, my health, my work, and sometimes something, it's super unaligned and like out of balance. But I wake up, I go to the gym, I come back, and then I write down my to-dos for the day or the things that I have to get done for the day. And sometimes I do it the night before, but that's super idealistic. So I do it in the morning. And then I open up my emails, I respond to emails. And again, right now I'm like interfacing with like a lot of potential investors and people who are trying to join the team, advisors. And so I'm emailing back and forth with them. And then I try to block out. So now what I'm doing is 3 days a week, I block out time to actively try to work on the app itself because I am the app developer. And so the thing that's interesting about being a founder is you don't realize you're signing up to put your hand in every single pot. And so I'm like marketing, social media, app development, meeting with investors, meeting with people, meeting with advisors, strategy moving forward. And so something I'm really trying to do right now is just expand the team. So just to be able to have the bandwidth to think about the path forward while actively working inside of Coily. And so on the days where I decide to work on development, then I'm sitting at the computer and I'm just like updating it. And I think those are the most fun days to me because then I just get to shut out everything and just think about what are the coolest features I can put into this? How can we make it better? What are the issues? What are the bugs? And what are just different things we can add to it? And so that's when I get to be truly creative and just like build. But they're also frustrating on the days where I'm trying to fix a small issue and it's not fixing itself, and it takes me 6 hours to do something really simple or really small, and then I have to take a break and like come back in like an hour. But yeah, most of my days look like me sitting at the computer. I think now I've been and because of the pandemic, you know, I'm not actively going out, meeting with people, interfacing with people. So whether or not I'm talking to my team, potential investors, or like working on the app, I'm going to be at the computer. And then the work days end at different points in time because, again, my hand is in every single pot. So whenever I decide my cutoff time, you know, I'll probably go watch some TV, Netflix or something, and relax, go through social media, Instagram, maybe go out with my friends on the weekends. And so I try to like be super intentional about, because I'm so self-directed, I try to be intentional about being balanced, because because the business is solely dependent on my productivity, I have to make sure that I'm investing in my health and my happiness in addition to, you know, Coily itself. So that's the stage of life I'm in.
No, right on. I mean, you mentioned an important piece that young people like always need, like we all need to hear that, right? That balance. Like we know that there's time to do everything that we want to do and need to do. And clearly the gym, the friends, and, you know, it seemed like you have that structure as far as like, okay, I'm going to dedicate this time to my emails. So that's something like we can all do that within our day. And then, like you said, take a break, you know, and then like go on. That's equally important because, like you said, you are Coily, so you don't want to burn yourself out. Beyond school, what other experiences or qualities or skills do you have that are important to succeed or allow Coily to succeed? What are those skills? Yeah, I know. It's a lot.
The first thing that came to my mind was honing authenticity. So I think I've been on a journey the past 2 or 3 years. I embarked on like this journey of learning how to be authentic. And I think in learning how to be authentic and like not thinking about how I should show up in certain rooms, it's allowed me to navigate just through the world with a lot more ease. And so even now when I'm speaking to like investors and things, or like just meeting new friends and I'm trying to like build my network or form connections, I am not really super interested in like hyper professionalism, and I realize that they aren't either. And again, this is the tech industry, so I don't know what it's like with like law and like trying to be a doctor or whatnot, but if something doesn't feel right, then I'm going to question it. You know, if the conversation is leaning in a way that is not serving me or isn't super respectful, like I'm going to bring it out. But also the way that and this is one of the things I was going to say in terms of just, you know, honing your pitch and honing your skills when you're pitching, is that you talk like you're having a conversation, you know, and you don't have to like be super intentional about the way that you're showing up. But if you're showing up confidently and you're showing up as yourself and you're showing up authentically, it takes a lot of pressure off of you, but it allows you to just flow into what you're doing. And so I think that the more with time, I've learned to be a lot more authentic and intentional about showing up as myself. And it has just allowed me to just move through the world with a lot more ease. So that's a skill that I've had to hone. And I think even in today's society, you're kind of taught to change yourself based on the environment that you're in. And that is strategic, but I think that you can be strategically yourself. So I think it's possible to pick up on social cues and show up, you know, authentically and move as yourself throughout the world. And then there's also the question of like, who are you, and figuring out who you are and that, you know, itself. So I think there are a lot of levels to it, but authenticity is like one of the biggest skills that I've had to learn to adopt over the past, you know, couple of years.
Do that. And then Kayla, is there anything going on?
Yeah, another question I saw that Shirley said was, how big is your team?
Yeah, so right now I have a team of 3. We used to be 4, but we just lost someone to a full-time job position. So we are 3 now, 3 unpaid people who are, you know, equity-based on the team. So I have someone who's the chief brand officer, and then I have a chief operation officer, and then there's me, the CEO. So yes. I said, how did you promote the app? That's actually something that's super interesting. So the realm of social media is way different now than it was in 2014. So in 2014, we actually contacted this blog called For Harriet, and it's like I don't know, has anyone heard of it before? It's a blog that was for Black women, kind of like an Ebony, but like not an Ebony. And it was in 2014. We contacted them with like a press release. So this is actually something I think if you have an idea or something that you should take note of, but we wrote up a press release, which is, you know, 3 kids create da-da-da-da. Like you type in like what your your attractive title is, and then you write down what the story is. And we emailed it to her, and she was like, oh, this is so cool. And she posted it, on Facebook on her platform. I think she had like 10,000 likes on Facebook. And so it ended up getting really popular from there. And then we were contacted by like BuzzFeed, Forbes, Business Insider, Washington Post. Like we were featured in we did like over 40 interviews in like 1 week. So, and then from there, it's like you just have exposure, and we were able to grow. And I think the nature of viral content nowadays is more so like through Twitter, TikTok, things like that. And that's actually something that I'm trying to like figure out now, even with Coily, like trying to get it to grow in a viral way. But I think creating press releases and reaching out directly to like journalists and things like that, blogs, is a super great way to like try to gain exposure.
We all relate and find comfort in people who have faced similar obstacle. Which obstacle have you faced in life?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Which obstacle have I faced in life? I would say, it depends on the scope of, which of obstacles we're talking about, like more so business obstacles or just like life, personal obstacles. Which one are you have preferences?
Which one? Listen, I'm going with you, Asha. Which one comes to mind? We have young people, like I know that in our day and throughout our journey, there's bumps along the way, right? And so with that, do you remember one that sometimes it's a turning point? Once you face that obstacle, so it can relate to business or personal.
I'm not sure why, but the obstacle that comes to my mind first is my journey into just learning how to interact with people. So my 8th grade year, so this is middle school, right before my 9th grade year of high school, my 8th grade year of high school, I was super shy, super introverted, didn't really speak up, didn't answer questions. I was not the person who would speak in any case. Like I'm chilling, I'm in the corner, I'm with me, So but I think after a while, I'd see people, I would look at the people who would answer questions, who'd speak up and who'd be outspoken. And that always felt like a more authentic, true version of myself. And so I made such an intentional decision to begin figuring out how to speak to people, how to not be so in my head about the way that I'm showing up. And this goes back to showing up authentically too, but I think just learning how to be comfortable in myself so that when I walk into a room, I think it's social anxiety, honestly. But learning how to be comfortable in myself enough so that when I walk into a room, I'm not wondering about what everyone's thinking about me, but rather I'm just showing up as myself, and I'm comfortable in whether or not you like me or whether or not you receive me well. And so that was a huge obstacle just because I hadn't done that for the first 15 years of my life. And then I was like, okay, I'm done with this. Let me see how I can change it. And I was, again, like, it was a very, very much so like YouTube, like how to be, not extroverted, but like how to just meet people, how to network, how to speak up or, whatnot. And I think it was just such an intentional change that like it had to have been the biggest obstacle. Not the biggest, but like one of the largest obstacles I faced just along my journey. The next thing I would say is my senior year of high school to this day, I would say was the most stressful period of my life because I was just, you're figuring out if you want which college you want to go to, what path you want to take, where you want to go. And I think that was the point in my life where I had to really learn how to ground myself and stay rooted in, my beliefs, and just learning about positivity, learning about being intentional and walking, trusting your gut. Like that was the period of time where I really had to learn because I was so tied up in knots and stressed about, what my future would look like. And so in both situations, I think they were just big turning points where I learned how to ground myself and how to be rooted in myself and how to interact with the world without the world changing who I am. And so I would say those are some of the biggest obstacles.
Final question. Some routes are straightforward while others are zigzag. Which just best describes the road to where you are right now?
Definitely more zigzag, straightforward. I mean, even if you just think about going to school and then deciding to take time off from school, like that in itself is like a huge, like zig off the path. But I mean, I've just learned that in every situation where I've always like been unsure about whether or not I'm going to be okay, I've always been okay. And so in making decisions in the future, my sister told me something. I was trying to weigh options between two different situations, and she said there are no right or wrong decisions, there are only decisions, and each one leads to the next one. And so that's something I've just like never forgotten. And I think just like understanding that regardless of what you choose, you're going to be okay, it allows you to move with a lot more confidence. So yeah, definitely zigzag, but that's okay, that's life.
Listen, I'm still living the zigzag journey. So just when you think you're like, okay, and I'm open to it, I'm like, there's a reason I'm going in this direction, or there's a reason I'm feeling this way. So let me like go, like trust that. And you're right, there is that trueness that you have to do, really become confident in that sense. Personally, but one more thing about Coily, because you mentioned it, you have 3 members of a staff. How do you survive? Where is like that part as far as an entrepreneur? Like, you know, I'm a teacher, so I get paid every 2 weeks, you know, so I am a dependent on like so how does it work for you as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so I did a few pitch competitions earlier this year, and you get a few thousand off of pitch competitions. And so like that's been the primary way that we've sustained throughout the past year and a half. Just doing them every few months and getting some, you know, a few thousand each one. And that, you know, allows you to hire contract workers, you know, and which are a lot cheaper, and they're not long-term commitments. And then also just providing stipends to your team. And honestly, a lot of just believing in the dream. But those, in terms of strictly financial, you can enter pitch competitions, kind of like the startup, the Shark Tank that you're doing. I think is it Shanny School? But yeah, kind of like that Shark Tank thing. And so you can enter them. There are a lot of little ones, and you can get a good little bit of money, and that'll allow you to sustain yourself throughout the process. But a lot of hope, that too.
Yes. And please, we all know people, and especially females, if you could just share with your auntie, your mom, Coilyapp, that's what we have to do. We have to support our small businesses. So please, even once you go on Ash's app, if you haven't already, you are supporting other entrepreneurs and small businesses. So it's really important that we do that with each other and invest in ourselves. So Asha, I will definitely share this with you and your team of 3. Did you hear that? Only 3. And Coilyapp is live. So again, when you're thinking about, you know, your team and you need this whole staff, Asha is doing it with 3, and she's still surviving, and it is beautiful. So keep that in mind. All right, you know, it doesn't need to be, and she's the CEO. So with that, I'll give anyone an opportunity to say anything. Asha's our fan, and welcome to the family, Asha. We appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. This is actually really cool. And if anything at all, definitely just reach out to me.